This is part one of a 5-part series on how long-term relationships with bullshitters can cause actual brain damage. This video is about dealing with bullshit over time and how it causes cognitive dissonance, which leads to profound emotional distress. Have you ever found yourself feeling mentally clouded when dealing with manipulative half-truths and inconsistencies? Neuroscience tells us that our brains are wired to seek coherence and understanding. We need a cohesive narrative in order to even function properly. When bombarded with contradictory statements, typical of bullshit, it disrupts our cognitive processes. This dissonance demands mental energy to decipher the truth, leaving us mentally exhausted and foggy. This phenomenon is called cognitive dissonance. The brain hates this feeling. Neuroscientific research indicates that the brain's amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex, which play key roles in emotional processing, are particularly activated by uncertainty. These areas are associated with the brain's fear response, and their activation can lead to heightened stress and anxiety levels. This constant state of mental ambiguity, it isn't just cognitively draining, it's emotionally distressing. Psychologists have found that uncertainty can actually be more stressful than knowing something negative for certain. This chronic stress can trigger emotional responses like anxiety, frustration, and a deep sense of unease. The prefrontal cortex, the PFC, a part of the brain responsible for decision making and problem solving, is particularly affected by this mental strain. It's working overtime to make sense of the nonsensical, which can lead to impaired cognitive function and decision making. When you're with someone who's just a bad person or an emotional invalidator all the time, yeah, it really sucks, but it doesn't actually lead to cognitive dissonance because we can reliably predict that this person will act like a jerk. That's bad, but the brain does like consistency. The more that we are exposed to contradictory and confusing information, the more our brain and emotions are taxed. So this can create a feedback loop where emotional distress exacerbates cognitive fog and vice versa, trapping us in a cycle of mental and emotional turmoil. To recap, dealing with sustained bullshit makes it hard to create a cohesive narrative, and the lack of a cohesive narrative causes sustained emotional distress. Make sure to watch part 2 of this 5-part series where I demonstrate how sustained stress and anxiety levels can actually lead to long-term changes in the brain.